Welcome to the Fantasy Grounds Academy, and I am going to be working on a custom Chat GPT that I've made for importing stat blocks. I just got off the messaging with Discord with Robert Aducci, and he and I came up with a way to help create the NPC stat blocks without getting the weirdness that usually comes with it when you try to get it to a correct format. So when you first start doing this, you'll notice that sometimes Chat GPT just won't comply with what you want it to do. It'll give you whatever it feels like, and sometimes it's not good when you're trying to create content and you want the content to turn out the way that you hope. So it'll give you all kinds of weird things. Like, for instance, when I first started this endeavor, I could never get around the fact that this thing constantly just kind of does its own thing, and you're still going to get this, but it'll be a lot less of it. So the stat block here, what it will do is give you something like this, and that's not very useful when you are trying to import this into Fantasy Grounds. That throws off the parsing tool, and this isn't the correct format. The correct format, or the format that'll work better, is actually down here on the bottom. I've done a lot of shows on these, but I'm going to go over this again. So essentially, you want to take and put the you want the stat block to come out almost perfectly, and this is what you want to see right here. So this is a way that it will read that format. It'll actually come out pretty good if you're doing this way. But if it comes out with a different format, like sometimes it'll put the numbers after. So if that's the case, you'll have to remind it or give it a good example of what you want it to do. So what Robert Aducci had discussed with me, and I kind of wondered if it would work, but he said that just put it in a table format. So rather than hoping and praying that it's going to follow your instructions, you just have the separators here in the columns and just put these two in table format. And when you go to copy and paste it into Fantasy Grounds, it should parse correctly. It won't pick up that table. I was concerned early on that it would actually grab the table and it wouldn't parse properly. So we can do that. I could start a whole new chat, but this is what I was creating earlier to test this theory. And what I've done is I've taken this custom Chat GPT and kind of added and refined some of the other earlier work that I've done. So I call this the what is this? That's not the content creator, is it? Aids in creating. No, that's not the right one. Let's see. So 5e stat block generator. These are some of the earlier ones. So that's what those are. Okay, so it has the new logo on it. Oh, I see. Okay, so it didn't take my logo for some reason. I don't know why. It's not showing up in here. But basically, I made this custom Chat GPT. So if we go to Explorer, and if I go to Edit, I'm going to show you what it looks like under the hood. So I'm going to ask it to put my darn thing up there. Here's what I made for it. This is my kind of like my token. And I'm going to tell it to upload this. So I'm going to have it upload this image as my custom one instead of having it design one. But if this doesn't work, I'll have to just go with what they give me. But it did work last time. I guess maybe it was too big or something. I don't know. But basically, I wanted to upload as my custom logo. Okay, yeah, so it took it. But now it's saying there's something wrong. Maybe it's too big. I don't know. But it's one of those things where, you know, you kind of have to play with this to get a feel for it. And sometimes it just doesn't want to do what you ask it. So this is now public. So when I'm done with the video, I'll put this link for this GPT so you guys can try it out. Eventually, they're going to have a store next year that they're going to launch where people are going to start monetizing this kind of stuff. So we'll see. But basically, what I want to do is just show you some of the configuration. So going into the configuration, you kind of have to define it. And what I've done is I've given it some links. I've linked it to the Woods of the Coast Creative Commons PDF. I've linked it to the Fantasy Grounds wiki Atlassian guides for NPC and tables and that sort of thing, so that it has some reference. So if it doesn't know, it can search there. And then it has some starting points, like create a rollable list for importing into Fantasy Grounds, generate a DnD5e NPC stat block for Fantasy Grounds, provide an adventure template for the DnD5e rule set, and help me format this data for Fantasy Grounds. So this is just a starting point. And then I've uploaded these different PDFs. So one's got all the NPC formatting for the DnD5e rule set. This one is a rollable list format, which is the format I'm developing for to make tables that make it easier to import into Fantasy Grounds. There's a 5e effects for the NPCs, and then there's a modified stat block, which I'm going to update with Robert's suggestion. He said to put it in a table format. And then the adventure content prompt, which is a text file with a template on the type of content you might make. So this is a combined tool that kind of combines all the different things. Previously, I wanted all of them in separate tools, which I still think is a better way to do things because it doesn't confuse the Chat GPT as much. But they are starting to get better. What I mean better is like there's more memory, larger page sizes, you can give it more data, so you don't run out of tokens as fast. You get roughly about 300 pages worth of text and without pictures, so that's a pretty considerable amount of data. You don't want to give it that much, but that's like its maximum. So once you're done, then you would update and save this. And if you are watching this in the future and you want to try this out, this is a paid app. So you can't access those Chat GPTs unless you have the paid version. I don't think it's going to be available until they release their store, which they're going to monetize some of these. So depending on what it does, you might be able to monetize some of this. It's got like people are making tools to convert text from, 3rd edition to 4th edition and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know if people are going to be able to legally monetize those. But I'm just saying that that's some of the stuff I'm seeing out there for the personal and commercial or non-commercial versions. So we'll see what happens. But so that's basically how this works. And now I'm going to actually go in and do a fresh start, and I'll give you an idea of the kind of prompts I'm giving it. So I'm going to go back into this Chat GPT and go back to the launch page, and over here on the left are all the custom Chat GPTs that I'm working on. Some of these I'm going to delete because they're just, I just got too many of them. But I think I'm getting closer to where I kind of have like a final release. That's kind of what I'm working on now. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this for the start up a new thing. And there's some starter things. So you can say create a rollable list for importing into Fantasy Grounds. The only problem with these starters is that it'll just give you a random thing. It's not going to give you what you want. So I'm going to first create an NPC, then I'm going to make a table that has, it's a rollable list. I call it that so it doesn't build a table, but essentially the rollable list will build like a spell book or something like that. And then we could build an adventure around the NPC. So this is going to be like the big boss, I guess. So, okay, so what we're going to do is create a DnD5e NPC stat block for a CR2 witch. I'm just using a witch. If you guys have any suggestions, like what kind of boss you'd like to see, as long as it's some kind of fantasy or related, I don't care if it's a dragon or whatever. If you guys want to see something else, but I just thought of a witch, but it can be anything you guys want. So I'll wait a sec here and see if you guys have any suggestions. So this is going to be the big boss for the campaign or for the adventure. So what I'm going to do is build like a short one-shot adventure just using Chat GPT, and it shouldn't take but maybe a couple hours to put everything together, including artwork and all that stuff. I'm not going to stream the entire thing, but definitely want to show you guys this. So it will definitely speed up your process once you understand the prompting and how that works, and it definitely makes life easier for a game master anyways. So say create a DnD5e NPC stat block for a CR2 witch. Okay, so I guess that's where we're going to end up, since none of you have any suggestions really. And then what I'm going to do is, oh yeah, thanks. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a couple more details. So I want to say she is armed with a dagger and darts. So she has some throwing darts and dagger. And I'm going to also say include a background, because I did have that in my template, include a background. So what that means is that I've already given it the parameters of the background, but if I don't say that, sometimes it'll skip over that, because the main focus is to generate just a stat block. So that in this case, so what I'll show you is some of the output that I'm getting, and I'm going to ask it to use, as I created in a stat block, CR2 witch using my custom data. Sometimes you have to tell it that, because it will just do anything it wants willy-nilly. If I tell it to use my data, it'll look at that first before it pulls in stuff, so it kind of helps with that. So let's see what happens, see what it gives us. So it's going to start generating, and it says based on your request and the provided guidelines. So it's getting ready to spit this out. Let's see what happens. So it's a CR2 witch, and then it's starting to create the stat block. And what you'll find is you'll get this sort of thing here, which this actually works. And Robert confirmed this with me. So this is exactly what I want, because this table won't actually get picked up in the parsing tool, which is the problem I was having, because it was basically building this any old way it wanted to. So this is good stuff. So the other thing you want to look for is not only the stat block arrangement, but some of the traits. They have to have this period after it, and I don't like that it italicized those, because I didn't ask for that, but it's not that big of a deal. The spell casting format looks right. She has some reactions, and here's the background. So that's kind of cool. So this is basically what you want to see when you are getting output from Chat GPT. So I'm going to go put this in Fantasy Grounds. So I was going to copy and paste the stat block part, including the table, and just copy that, and then go to Fantasy Grounds. And then you go into the DnD5e rule set has an NPC importer. Not all rule sets have this. Some have their own. They work a little differently. But this one works pretty good if you have the right format. So this kind of beats trying to hand enter everything. So I'm pulling up the NPCs, and then on the drop-down list, I made my own group. This is called Chat GPT Monsters. So I've made other ones before, just kind of practicing. And I'm going to pull up this text importer, which is this hamburger menu down here at the bottom. Once you open that up, on the left-hand side is where you're going to paste the stat block. And one thing of note, the background doesn't belong here, so I'm going to copy and paste that and put that over on the right-hand side. That's where all the extra stuff goes. And then I'm going to delete it, because I don't want that to throw off the parsing tool. And then you just see there's no table there, so that works. And then if you right-click and you go to clean up text, you'll kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like. And you don't have to do that, but that's a kind of a preview. That's how I look it over before I approve it. And then I'm going to copy and paste the name and put it over here on the right, because I want it to kind of format this stuff a little bit better. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Control-2. That makes that header, and then Control-B for the background information. There we go. So once that's there, I'm going to take one quick look, make sure all this formatting looks, so far it looks pretty good. It doesn't look jacked up or anything. If you have one little thing out of place, it'll throw the whole thing off. Like you'll see an extra comma sometimes where it says medium human. It'll say medium humanoid, comma, human, comma. If it does it, just one extra period or one extra comma will throw this thing off. So anyways, import. And here we go. So this looks pretty good. So Witch of the Whispering Woods. And it looks like it did everything right here. So that's what I'm looking at. Challenge rating 2, proficiency bonus of 2, common, Sylvan. Yeah, it looks really good. And then on the other tab, this is you get your summary. So you won't see the summary in Fantasy Grounds unless you use this import tool. If you do one by hand or you're looking at older books that were released before the tool came out, they'll have a little bit more plain. They'll have like some lore and maybe a picture or something linked here. That's about it. So that's essentially the steps that you would do for an NPC stat block. And the whole thing is getting this formatting correctly. One of the things I was fighting is this actual the ability scores were coming up any which way they wanted to. Even though I gave it an example, it was still kind of fighting me on it. But other than that, everything else worked pretty good. So it looks good. Pretty happy with that. So at this point, if you had your artwork ready, you could associate the token with it. And then if you had a photo, you can link that to the back here, just like you'd see in a regular adventure. So let's go back to Chat GPT. And let's make her spell book. So what I'm going to do is say create a rollable list. And I'll show you why I have to do this later. But create a rollable list of the potential spells in the witch's spell book, including the ones on the stat block, including the spells above, I'll say. And what I wanted to grab the spells that she already has, plus maybe a couple other random ones. So when it says rollable list, I've defined that in my settings. So the reason I don't say table is because when you go to import it in Fantasy Grounds, it'll pull in the tables data sometimes, and you don't want that. So I'll go ahead and take up, and that's what I was afraid of in the stat block, because I was afraid this was going to interfere with the parsing tool, but it didn't. But I know on tables it can. So I'll go ahead and hit enter or send message. And it's going to generate like just a random list of spells, but it will also pull in the spells that came off of the stat block. See, this is what I did not want, because this is not the format that I'm looking for to import into, because I want to, I have my own separator. So what I'm going to do is re-ask it and give it the right prompt. So I didn't really give it much data. I just said, just do this, and I didn't really do well. Yeah, it says it gave me a network error on top of that. That's okay. I'm going to regenerate, but I'm not going to use that same thing. And I'm going to word the prompt. So this prompt actually does make a difference. So let me see what this regenerate does. Yeah, it's going to try to do it again. So what I want to do is, oops. Yeah, see, it's just doing whatever it wants. Now it's a D20 all of a sudden, like 20 spells, really. So I'm just going to give it the, I'll say that was a better run on it. But what I want to do is define it a little bit more. So what I'm going to say is, we don't know what, I don't remember what her maximum spells are that she can have in her spell book, but I'll say create a rollable list of, I'll say 8 results. 8 total results, so that would be a D8. And that's because I didn't prompt it really well. I just kind of threw something out there, and I didn't really ask it what I really wanted to ask it. So create a rollable list of 8 total results with the potential spells in the Witch's Spellbook, including the spells above. Then I'm going to say use my rollable list template. So it should hopefully pull that in instead of just doing whatever it wants. So I kind of had to tell it, look at my data first, and I kind of did that in the beginning, but I don't know. Yeah, see, this isn't what I want. I don't want the table. So it's not really looking at what I'm supposed to. But see, even as this says to separate it with the pipe. So what I'm going to say is just create a text only, because that separator is making it set it up as a table. And I'm using the pipe as a separator, so that's probably what's going on. So just create a text version, no formatted tables. So I did tell it that, but see, it says, yeah, each one was separate by a pipe, 2-digit numbering. Yeah, so it did pull in some of the stuff I said, but I did tell it, don't do this, don't do that. But you can't really do negative prompts in DALL-E 3 or in any of these programs. It's like it wants to hear yes, less no. So it's more of a forward-thinking thing and doesn't try to go back. But if you give it good examples of what you want, then it will do it right. So here's what I want right here. So if I would have worded that and said, do this, but I don't want a table. I just want a plain text list. This is what I want. So I've hit this, go to copy, and then go into Fantasy Grounds. And then this will be the spell book for this particular thing. So we're going to just make a rollable table in case, you want to make some, output that's random. I would probably turn it into an item and just link all the spells in there. But I'm going to go ahead and just make this table just to show you the table function. So if I go to tables, you can do the same thing. There's a table import tool. That this tool is more universal to most of the core rule sets in Fantasy Grounds. So if you're wanting to do tables in a different rule set, that this is available. So I'm just going to say Chat GPT 4.0 tables, just so I know what this is. So I'm making my own group or my own header here for the data type, and this is a good habit to get into, even if you don't tend to build anything. You start building your own stuff, you put it in your own group, and that way it's not mixed in with the original stuff, and you're not going to make a big mess. So that's just a matter of organization. So I'll go ahead and hit this information. So the important fact is that I have a pipe separator. So rather than having a simple data type, I said delimited, and that's going to be separated by a pipe. So not comma, not colon, not semicolon. The reason for that is so that when it pulls in the data, it's not going to make extra columns and rows because I have those in there in a sentence. So that's why I use the pipe. That's the best one. And then it says column headers in the first row. Yes, we'll check that. Table ranges in first column. Yes, check that. So what I'm going to do is hit Control V for Victor. I'm going to take this Witch's Spellbook here because I don't need that. I'll just, that's actually the title. And this first line here is the header. So it says 1d8, and then it says spell over here. Or I could say roll instead. So maybe just put roll, but actually 1d8 is fine. We'll just leave that. And then we'll say random spell book. That way you can use it in other areas, not just for the witch. But this is what's in her spellbook, and a couple extras. So now that I have that, I hit import, and there we go. So, yep, 1d8. There's the spells. You can roll, and it will tell you which spells. So if you want to take this a step further, if you have spells in your campaign, you can link those to this table if you want. So I think I have the SRD loaded. That's usually what I work with when I'm doing this sort of thing. So if you go to your campaign, or actually in this case it would be characters, and go to spells, you can find if they're not proprietary spells, like they're not part of, if they're part of the SRD, you can link them. So if I wanted to find, I'll just look up poison spray, for example. Yeah, so you can take this and drag it into this table. That way, when you roll, it clicks onto the spell itself. So you can take this a step further, if you want. You can actually easily do this just by hand typing all this out, but I just wanted to show you the import function. You can get pretty complex. If you make a bunch of tables, you can link them together, and you can use the story pro, which is part of the story entries. And if you click on templates, if you have your Dungeon Master's Guide loaded and some of the other official books, there's some templates where you can roll on. You just click once and it rolls on like a gazillion tables, and you can come out with all kinds of stuff. You can make a whole town, a whole adventure with it. But doing it with like this, with just copy and pasting out of Chat GPT and then importing it, is so much faster in the long run. I mean, for something like this, it's probably not a big deal. You just put that in yourself by hand. That's not a big deal. But when you start getting longer, more complex, or more of them, it's better to have a tool such as the table import tool. So that's a really handy thing. So you could fill the rest of this out with the rest of the spells if you wanted. So now what I'm going to do is you can make an item. So if I go to items, I'm going to look for a book, because I'm going to make a spell book, an actual item. And there's a spell book already in here, part of the SRD. Well, it's usually read-only, so you can't do much with that. So I'm going to make a copy of the spell book, and then I'm just going to rename it. So once I make a copy, I just drag this back into the items area, and then I'm just going to change it to Witch's Spellbook. So I got to unlock it, which you can do now. And I'm going to say Witch's Spellbook. Okay, and then I'm going to leave all this, but I might bring the value up a little bit more, depending. But it's got 100 pages for recording spells. And then you would link all the spells in here that you generate off that table, if that's what you want to do. And then I'm going to go into the Chat GPT. Oops, what happened there? Oh, okay. All right, so now it's going to, what's it doing here? Oh. It's acting funny. Come on, there we go. All right, so now I'm going to say create a item stat block for the Witch's Spellbook. Include the lore and the spells list. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here. So you can do stuff like this. I didn't specifically set up the Chat GPT to do item stat blocks, but they're pretty basic. It's mostly all text, so it should be able to handle it. And if it doesn't know what the item stat block is, I gave it reference to like the SRD and that sort of thing. So it should be able to figure it out. So now I'm going to have it go in there and, okay, so, yep, Witch's Spellbook, yep, wondrous item, uncommon, here's the description, and then there's the lore, and then you're going to get your spell list. So that's really handy. So that doesn't take as long to do as you would have in other cases. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this. And I'm getting a lot of these errors because it's peak right now. Everyone and their mom's using this stuff, so hit copy. I'll just regenerate that and see what happens. Oh, I reached my limit. Oh, perfect. Good timing. All right, so now what I'm going to do is go in here and in Fantasy Grounds and open up that item. And then see, it gives you kind of a generic thing here, but I'm going to hit Control V as in Victor. And then it's a wondrous item uncommon. So I'm going to change this type up here to wondrous item. Is that, yeah, wondrous item. Because it's very specific. It's not just a book or adventuring gear. Wondrous item. And then the rarity is uncommon. And then I'm going to right click and start cleaning some of this up. I don't need this text anymore. So you're getting the generic description, and then here is the actual information that Chat GPT wrote for us. And then you'll want to look over your data just in case it gives you the wrong information. So sometimes it is wrong. It doesn't get it right 100%. Probably like 90% is about what I'm noticing. So then there's that, and then here's all your spells. So at this point, what I would do is it's kind of the same thing that I was doing on that table, is link the spells here. And then that way, when you give this book to one of your players, the spells are already in there, and they just drag it onto their actions tab on their character sheet. If they are able to, spend the time to study them and add them to their spell list. But nonetheless, I mean, this is just a cool way to do that. And if you wanted to, since I have the stat block up here, I could take this and unlock it. And then down here, I might add another section. So this might be loot. And then I will link the spell book here. And then I'll just kind of put this in bold or in this header color. And this is the item that goes with this NPC. So this will be available for you if you pull up this NPC stat block. If you scroll down far enough, you'll have this item here. Now, I'd probably put it in a parcel because it's a lot easier to award it that way. So if you wanted to make this a treasure item and then throw in a few coins and a potion, you'd make a parcel and link that here. So that way you don't just put the item here. You actually have a parcel, which makes it easier for you to award your players if you intend to do that. But the way I have this set up now, it's essentially just a way for the GM to pop this up and look at it. If you really wanted to, you can just drag the item itself into the players, whoever the respective player is. That might be a better way to do it, or you can drag this item into the party sheet, which would give the chance for the players to grab it if once they discover it and they figure out what it is and it's not trapped and all that stuff. So I could put it there, and then the players can take it from there. But I was going to change the value since it has more spells in it. So I would think something like this would be worth at least 250 gold, if not more. I'd probably go with 350 just to be safe. And then maybe add one more pound to it since it's got more writing and, bookmarks and stuff in it. And then, you can put notes. You have your non-ID name. So instead of Witch's Spellbook, you can just say Ancient Leather-Bound Book. That way you're not giving up the ghost, right away. And that way you can unidentify it. So if I hit Control V, I'm just going to put this as a real generic description. And then you could put this ID on. So when they first grab the book, it's just going to say this, and they're not going to get all the information until they crack the book open and decipher it. So there's lots of cool stuff you can do with Fantasy Grounds. But I'll go back to an image that I created earlier for the same NPC witch character. And that was to, let's see, where did that go? So I have another conversation that's essentially further along. And this is the image that I got, the final image. I had different iterations, but essentially I just told it that I want, let's see, where did I put the prompt? So these are the other iterations. Like, I didn't mind that one, but it looked too video game-like. I didn't like that. And then I tried an oil painting version, which I like this one. This one's like something you would see in a book or something, which looks really good. But then this one, it's a good combination of both. It's kind of got that 3D video game look, but it also has the painted look. I think this would make a really good token. So if you wanted to turn this into a token, you could download it and then use like a token stamp, something like that, to create a token for it. It wouldn't take long if you only got one or two. But if you're going to be doing a bunch of these, like over 3 or 4 of them, I would get all that work done first, get all that stuff put in, get all the artwork done, and then link everything together at the end in Fantasy Grounds. So if I take this and go to the Oops, I didn't want to do that. So I'm going to go and bring in that image and make a token out of it. Or you could be also, if you had a character, you can make this your, what do you call it? Your portrait. So this is, yeah, so this would be more like a portrait photo because it doesn't have the POG look to it. So you can do something like that, download this, and then if you want to make it look more like a token, you can grab something like that and then maybe shrink it just a little. I want more of the head in there. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And I hit download for that. So you make a couple variations so you can use it in other places. Because maybe you'll have a PC and you want to use that for your portrait photo instead of a token. So they are different. So that would, you'd bring this into Fantasy Grounds, refresh. So if you're going to add artwork to Fantasy Grounds, let's just go make this thorough since I can't do any more generation. So I'm going to close all this crap because I got too much stuff going on here. Very confusing. And that's another thing, is staying organized. That's a really big thing, especially if you're doing a big project. If it's just one thing like this, who cares? But if you're doing a big conversion or a big world building thing, you got to have some sort of methodology, or you're going to go nuts. All right, so there's the token. Right now, it's just the letter W. So if I go to the assets, this is where I can add assets. So I'm going to add a token here. And then I want to hit folder, and here's another token that I had earlier, but I want to go ahead and go to my downloads folder. And one of the things that you want to get in the habit of is naming these things. So instead of token 3, what I'm going to do is name it as TKN, so I know that's a token, underscore, and then I'm going to go with, we'll say which, and then we'll go 01, in just in case we have more than one. And that's the token for it. And then if you want the artwork and not just a token, in the campaign, in this folder here, there's an images folder and there's an artwork folder. So I can grab these two pieces of artwork, but I want to rename them. So I'm just going to say which, but I'm going to put portrait, or I usually put PRT in front. So I know that's going to be designated for portrait underscore, I got watch. Let's try which. Okay. Any day now. Let's spell that right. So W-I-T. There we go. Okay, so this is just a way to keep organized so you don't make a big mess. And then this is just going to be the Whispering Woods Witch or something. This is going to be her actual picture. Whispering Woods Witch. So this would be like the picture you share with the party if they encounter her. So now that I've done that, I'm going to drag this full picture in here. And now whenever you add or change or move things around on the back end, you got to refresh. So there's a refresh button down here at the bottom near where the folder and store button are. Click that and it will go through your folders and take a look. And then now I'm going to look at the images and click on campaign, because that folder will be created once you add content. And then go to the artwork folder, and then here's the pieces. So there's the portrait photo, which I didn't put it in the right folder, but I do have intent on moving that over to the next portraits folder. So here's the picture. Turned out pretty good. So that's a preview. That's not the picture, that's a preview. So if I want to add it to the campaign, even though it's in that campaign folder, I haven't added it yet. So if I go to images, and then I bring up the asset folder again, there's the picture. Then what I can do is bring up that preview. I can either drag it over here, or I can just I can make the background decal or create image record. And there we go. So now this is an actual campaign image record. So at this point, I would link this to the back of the character sheet. So if you wanted to have it conveniently available for you during gameplay, you can do something like that, and then when you're ready, you just pop that picture up, share it with your buddies or your friends. And then the token, if I go over back to the assets area and go back to the tokens folder under campaign, there's the witch. So I'll drag that up here, replace that W, and now she has a custom token. So now to test it out, you take this and drag it into the combat tracker. You see there's a token there, and then you go to the offense, which is a sword, and this has their spell casting in there and that sort of thing. So I don't think the spell casting turned out right because it was not added as a trait. So that's a faux pas on my part. I didn't pay attention to that, but essentially the spells will not populate if they're not in the right area. So what you would do to fix this is to move the spell casting trait into traits, because right now it's an action. So if I create a new trait and take this header, spell casting, and hit Control Copy, Control V up here for the header. So this is kind of doing it manually. And then Control A, and then Control Copy, and then Control V for Victor. And then I'm going to take this thing and just delete this entire trait. And now I'll lock it. I'm going to take the NPC off of this combat tracker, and then I'm going to re-add it. So that should fix that. Okay, so I go there. Yep, so there's all the spells. So that was a little minor glitch there that I didn't notice. So that's what I'm saying with Chat GPT. It's not perfect. I did say somewhere in the generation tool, though, I believe that the spellcasting belongs in traits, not in actions. You can put a spell in actions, but you can't put the whole list. So anyways, that fixed that. Not a big deal if you only got one of them, but if you've got like 12 spellcasters and you had to fix all 12 of them, that would suck. So now that I have that, and it has a picture now, so when you bring up this stat block and you go to the other tab, you have the image, the token's already there, you have a link to the spell book. I mean, it's all right there. Really more convenient to run this than trying to dig through the entire adventure looking for it. So that's a way you kind of tie everything together. But you do that at the end. You link everything at the end. So this has a little bit of mist to it. So if you wanted to make this more dramatic, you can unlock it. And then you can go into the effects. And I'm going to add kind of like a mist effect. Just slightly dull it down a little bit. The speed of it is way too fast. So in the mist, if you go to the center, that's a neutral. So I think 53 is a good number, or 47. You know, it's kind of moving like that. Then you could turn it down. And then if you don't like it out here in the periphery, you got the mask on. You can turn the mask on and just unmask the parts that you want this to show in. In this case, I just want the picture. There you go. So it gives it a little bit of movement, and it doesn't look as, static. It kind of gives the image a little bit more movement. Kind of looks more scary, actually. And if you really wanted to, you can put some weird eyeball stuff in there. So let me do that. So now that I have that layer, I'm going to add one more effects layer. Now, I wouldn't necessarily do this for this one photo, but I'm just showing you some stuff you can do. So now I will take this down here and go to effects. And then I think I'm going to go to the color changer or something. No, actually the water. That's the one I want. So I'll put water there. And then what I'll do is bring this up and then go to the effects. And we're going to make that water. And that will make the entire thing kind of light up. So let's go to water. Yep. Let's see if I did this right. Yeah, so it's moving barely. Let me turn off the mist. Yeah, okay, so the mist layer was blocked, but basically You don't want it on the whole image, right? So we're gonna put a mask on it. And then around the eyeball, if I hold down the Alt key, I can freehand this and just kind of trace around the eyeball here. And then put a little blur on it, and then turn down the intensity on it because it's too big. There we go. And that way it kind of gives it more movement. Now let's see what happens when we put that on there. Yeah. So it kind of gives it that look, kind of that, and I think it's still a little bit too much. It's like too warped. So we can turn that down a little. So you just want to give it a little movement, make it look like it's actually moving around. So you probably do that with her nostrils and her teeth and stuff. So anyways, that's just kind of a, something you can do in a relatively short amount of time. So if I wasn't explaining it and I knew what I was doing and I had everything organized and I didn't have to go back and fix this and everything, it would have taken like very small amount of time. So the last thing I wanted to mention here was the adventure. So I've taken this the same NPC and I asked it to make a one-shot. So it's called The Witch's Enigma. It made the intro, there's story lore, story background, adventure setup, and then it has the chapter 1, the haunted village, a read aloud, plot hooks, and then you have encounter notes, and then the aftermath, and then it goes to chapter 2, which you head into the forest. It kind of gives you the same type of thing except for the plot hooks. And then number 3 is kind of like the end of it, where you encounter the lair of the witch. It says the lair is a labyrinth of twisting corridors and strange magical rooms, each more perilous than the last. And then the DM info says the final confrontation with the witch who uses her spells and cunning to challenge the adventurers. And the encounter notes, the witch employs illusions, charms, and her spellbook's magic in battle. Her lair also contains hazards like a cauldron of bubbling potion and animated objects. So you can kind of, build on that if you want. And then in the aftermath, upon defeating the witch, the adventurers discover her spellbook and other magical treasures. They learn what the witch was protecting and Sacred Grove from being destroyed by the villagers. So then you have this outro and then you have an appendix. So this kind of gives you an outline, a framework to build your one shot. And if you want to, you can actually prompt it to take the same information and expand on it and maybe work on each section by itself. So just tell Chat GPT, let's work on number 1. Let's give it a little bit more details. Let's add a table here. So there's like these plot hooks there's 3 plot hooks. So we can turn those into a rollable table. So if you don't want to pick one of these 3, you can roll randomly. Maybe 1 to 2, the villagers report seeing a ghostly figure on count 3 and 4, or roll 3 and 4, local farmer pleads for finding missing daughter. And then the last one's an ancient tome in the village library hints at a powerful witch. So what I might do with this is I would say 1 to 3, the villagers see something weird. And then 4 and 5, the farmer pleads to find his daughter. And then if you roll a 6, there's an ancient book in the village that talks about the powerful witch. So I'd weigh the table so that the likelihood of